All right, our next step, we're going to deal with this band that runs across the whole screen. So it's going to turn off. Okay. All right. So I'm going to need to be able to target that section, right? And I've already put a class of title overlay. Excellent. So I can take advantage of that. All right. And now I'm going to use a background, right? And if you remember, right, we used some red. There we go. Right. And I'm going to use, rather than background, the background color. Okay. And there we go. All right, there we go. Then I'm going to use my same class, and I want to start to target the typeface. Right, so I'll go to H1. Right. And I want to change that font. And right, if you remember, right, this is where I brought in from my Google Fonts and kept this here for just this occasion. I'm going to copy that. Right. Save that. Right, there it is. There's my Google font is now showing up. And we're going to go, I want it to be a bit bigger. So I'm going to go with a font size of 96 pixels. There it goes. That looks pretty good. And I just want to make sure I'm just going to get rid of all the margin. Get rid of all the padding. All this should be gone already, but just in case. Right. So yeah, all right, that's all fine. Okay. And I'm going to go with the color. And I want to go with white. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. And then my font weight, right? It's like this is a little fat. Right? It's a little too heavy, I think. So font weight. Right? And if you remember from the Google font, we can pick our weight. I'm going to go with 300. Much better. Okay, yeah, that's a lot closer, right, to what my design looks like. Yeah, right. It's not the same typeface, but it's pretty good. Okay. Right. All right. And I noticed, right, that this is not really great, right? This little touch here. So I got to deal with that. So I can just put, right, in the overlay, I can just use a little padding on the bottom of maybe 10 pixels. Right, and there we go. That adds a little space, and that looks pretty good. Right, I'll tweak it up. But, right, I don't want 100%. I want this to be more transparent. Right, so I can go ahead and say opacity, we'll say 0.7. All right. Uh-oh, that's not quite what I wanted, right? It's like the opacity looks better, right? Looks pretty good, right? It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. But my type is also being made slightly transparent, which is not what I wanted, right? And this is happening because I'm doing everything, right? By putting the opacity on here, I'm signifying that I want everything that's inside the title overlay class to be transparent, which is not really what I want. All right, so this direction is not going to work. But luckily, right, if you remember how we did this button up here, right, we've got something that could work, right? Right, if we look back to the button, right, we've got our background color. So let's see if RGBA will work. All right. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna select over here and see oh, look at that, right? So do you see what I did there, right? By gotten the RGB color, selecting the color option, okay. And now if I change this to A and I add a 0.7, right? 5. But, you know, I got to remember, get rid of the opacity because that's not quite right. Let's see. Oh, and there we go. Right, so we can use a different color value, right? Not the hex value because we can't work with the opacity, or we can't make anything transparent with that. But with the RGBA color value, we can. All right, so now the background color is set to the red I want, but the text inside of it, right, the white text is still 100%, so much better. The next thing I want, right, is I want to get this text into the center, right? But if we looked at, remember the design, right, we have one that's kind of aligned to the left, one kind of aligned to the right, but they're a little tighter, right, than the actual, right, the actual width. So, all right, does anybody have any ideas, right, of what we can do, right, because title overlay has to stay the full width, but, right, if we add another div, and I would say if we went with the class of wrapper, and we move right, so now we've got our same wrapper, right? But we've nested, right, our H1s inside of it. So it's now within the regular frame, but our red band goes the full width because that's the container, and the container is stretched to 100%. Right, so okay. But you know, I'm gonna want to target some other things in here. So I'm gonna change this to title wrapper. Okay, so save that. All right, and we're gonna make a class. Okay, and I'm gonna make the max width because I want it to adjust. Now our regular wrapper is 1080. I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm going to need to do my margin, right? So, right, and if I do 0 auto, right, we know what will happen. I'll leave it like that for now. And now I'm gonna need to target each of these. Right now I could use title wrapper first of, you know, each one first of type. But just to show, right, just a little different way, maybe to go around, I'm gonna call this headline top. All right, I'm gonna add another class. Okay, so why would we do one over the other? It's just preference, right? So by working with classes, they're sort of more specific, right? This is a simple page. We've just got a few instances where the cascade works. You know, maybe our first of type, last of type works here. But often, if you've got a really complicated site, you may want to use classes so that you can be a little more specific on where things go. And it's not dependent completely on the structure of your HTML. So we're going to have to save that. Okay. So, all right, so we're going to do headline top. Oops, wrong. Brackets. Okay. And I'm going to do a little text align. Left. Oh, headline top is not a class. There we go. That's better. Okay. Okay. Text align left, right? And you can see that 1,000 is sort of indented it a little bit. And then we're going to do headline bottom. Right. Okay, there we go. Well, so right now they're spaced apart, right? We've got them in our separate lines. But now I want to move this mockingbird with the bottom one up, right? So I'm going to use a trick called with the margin top, and we can use negative values. So I'm going to use negative 46 pixels. What? Uh-oh. So it looks like my rule did not work. So I'm going to try and debug this using the web inspector. Okay. So we can control click and get the inspector. And what this does, right, and we'll talk about this more as the semester goes on, but it allows us to explore, right, each of our items and figure out, right, what's actually happening here. So, okay. So in my title wrapper, and I'm interested in what's going on here. Okay. So I selected my element. You can use this pointer, right, to select your element, but now I'm targeting the mockingbird. So the rule was headline bottom, right, and you'll see that margin top, to move it down with the minus has a line struck through it. And what that means is that there's some rule that's taking precedence over this rule, and it's blocking or canceling this rule, right? Cascading style sheets, these rules cascade. So the ones furthest down are the most common, and then they work their way up, and you could see, right, the margin is being overwritten, this margin then top is being overwritten, and they're all being controlled by this margin up here. So these little blue checkboxes, right, if I uncheck them, aha. So if I get rid of this rule, right, this attribute here, then all my other margins start working, and I get the minus 46, which is what I'm after, right? And right when I toggle, I don't really see how this zero margin is doing anything for me, right? I put it in to make sure there was no margin in this section, but I already have the universal selector taking all the margin off. So I really don't need this one, okay? And when I turn it off, then I can get more specific with this margin top and pull it up and override the general. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to turn this off. So what that means is I come up to right where my margin 0 was, right, and I just delete it. Okay, save that. And there we go. Right, now I've got my type in order. Now the web inspector, changes you make in there are just temporary, right? And they only apply. So, but it's super effective for helping to debug and sort of try things out and sort of see what you're doing before you make any saves or commitments in your code. So, well worth practice. And I'll put some links on the blog to longer demos on how that works. Okay. All right, so our title section is in, and I think I'm going to stop there, and we'll worry about the lists here on the next section.